We are welcome back to class. In this class, which is the fifth lesson in the fourth module of the product owner, we'll be looking at the product owner and the stakeholders. In the last lesson, we looked at story mapping, where we further broke down epics into features and to user stories, and we related on how we release in some of those features. We also mentioned about vertical slicing. So we'll take another turn of the product owner, which will be focusing on the stakeholder this time around. So let's find out who is a stakeholder. Who are the stakeholders? A stakeholder is an individual, group, or entity that has a vested interest. What is most important is that the stakeholder has a vested interest in a project, product, or organization. It could be an individual, it could be a group, it could be an entity, but more importantly, has a vested interest in a product, project, product, or organization. That is what the stakeholders, who a stakeholder is. Stakeholders can influence or be influenced. Stakeholders can influence or be influenced by the outcomes, decisions, and activities related to the project or initiative. The stakeholders play a significant role in shaping the direction, requirements, and success of the endeavor. Of course, we've seen that from when we started this training, that the stakeholders are quite important to the development of what we are focusing on. Stakeholders can be internal or external to the organization and can have a wide range of interests and perspectives. The stakeholder can have wide range of interests and perspectives. It could be internal or external. So let's go further to look at the stakeholder as how can we identify various stakeholders? Stakeholder identification. We can see when we have vested interest as accountability, vested interest as funding, vested interest as the regulatory body, vested interest, pardon me, I don't know why this thing is jumping up and down, vested interest as responsibility. Vested interest also could be the consultants. Vested interest as the user of the product. Vested interest as the impacted. And vested interest as the owner. We are mostly used to stakeholders as the user, but we can see from here the stakeholder or a stakeholder goes beyond just the user. It could be someone or a group or an entity that is accountable on that particular project or product or portfolio. It could also be the one as an individual or group or entity bringing in the funds, right? The regulatory body, in this case, government, essentially, are stakeholders in any matter that concerns them. So we can see a difference between the one responsible and the one accountable. The one responsible is undertaking that task. The one accountable is the one that oversees the one responsible. So in a Scrum team, the developers are responsible for their user stories, but the product owner is accountable for what they do. The product owner owns the product backlog. But at this point, let's just know we are talking about the stakeholder. So when we identify an individual, group, or entity as responsible on the project or product, such becomes a stakeholder. Even the consultants, subject matter experts, and the rest, they are stakeholders. Of course, we know who the users are. The impacted. The government decides to build a road that will pass through your village special portion. That will cause an impact on that piece of land. So those affected are also stakeholders on the project. Then, of course, the owned. Let's go further. It's a long lesson, so I want us to catch some speed. From there, we look at what we refer to as stakeholders management. We'll be seeing the stakeholder from different angles in this lesson. All what is important is that we should have good understanding of all this so that we can begin to engage from those perspectives. So stakeholders management. We have guide and educate them. How do you manage the stakeholders? There are some you just need to guide and educate them. There are some you need to consult with them often. There are some you don't need to consult with them often. When we go further, we will see what we mean by those. There are some you just need to understand their expectations. There are some you report failures and successes early to them. There are some you build genuine relationships with them. There are some you engage with them by allowing them to have a voice. You allow their voices to be heard. That is how you just need to manage them as stakeholders. We would be breaking them down further as we go on. There are some you maintain truthful and excellent communication with, which is close to building relationship with them. And yet there are still some you identify the stakeholders early and you engage with them throughout the project. Moving forward, so on our own, let's expand on different thoughts. Let's expand on these views as regards the previous slide that's talking about this stakeholder identification. Let's relate each of these stakeholders to the management model. Okay? Then we have what we call the stakeholder analysis, and this is a power interest grid, which tells us about power on one side and interest on the other side. How do you manage stakeholders where some have high power and some have high interest? So where you have a stakeholder that has high power and also high interest, what do? You manage them closely. You do not want to offend such a stakeholder. A stakeholder that has high power, that can do and undo, and has high interest, you want to manage such stakeholder closely. Where you have a stakeholder that has high power but with low interest, just keep them satisfied. You keep them satisfied. Stakeholders with high interest but low power, all you need to do is to keep them informed. Inform them as and when due regularly. And where you have stakeholders with low interest and low power, just keep an eye on them. You monitor them. There are times that the impacted could fall into this category that you monitor. So it's left for individuals as project owner or product owner to begin to identify how to manage the stakeholder. This is consideration for the power and interest grid. Moving further. So here we are looking at the stakeholder analysis under what we call the salience model, where, pardon this error, this is legitimacy, and we have the urgency and power. It's just similar to what we have there, but there are three regions here. This is what we call the Venn diagram, I believe. Okay? So we have that which is urgent, that which is legal, and that which comes with power. So there are some stakeholders that fall under the power only. They would be dormant. Others that fall under the legal only would be discretional, right? Others that fall under the urgency could be demanding. Then still others that have both power and legitimacy could be dominant. Others that have both power and urgency could be dangerous. Others that have both urgency and legality could be dependent. While others with the three would be definitive. And this added the eighth one that are outside. So we'll say the eighth one has no interest at all on this whole scale. So this is just another view that we could look at stakeholder analysis. Going forward, We have the last slide broken down into the 7 categories. The discretionary, these are rightful stakeholders, but they do not have urgency or power. The dormant has power, high power, but no legitimacy or urgency. The demanding has neither power nor legitimacy, but wants demands addressed immediately. The dominant has both power and legitimacy, but not urgency. They have formal power. The dangerous have both power and urgency, but do not have project authority. Then the dependent has urgency, but not power. They are involved in the project and lean on someone else to have their voice heard. Then the definitive, highest salience, have power, legitimacy, and urgency. They are the key team members. So that's another view we could look at it. Let's take another view, which will be the last view of the stakeholders. This is another category. They are all the same, but from different angles, different theories, different school of thoughts. So we could also classify the stakeholders as key stakeholders, the primary stakeholders, and the secondary stakeholders. The key stakeholders can significantly influence or are important to the success of a project, plan, or action. That the primary stakeholders are affected either positively, having benefits, or negatively by the result of a project, plan, or action. Then the secondary stakeholders have the marginal effect on the results of the project, plan, or action. So just take some time to make some of your personal research into all this, but they come as different angles to which you want to view the stakeholders. We have 2 more slides to go, then we'll end this class. Next slide, please. Stakeholder engagement refers to the process of involving and collaborating with stakeholders throughout the duration of a project or initiative. What is important there is collaborating with the stakeholders throughout the duration of a project. And in Agile is big on continuous collaboration with the stakeholders. Effective stakeholder engagement aims to build positive relationships, gather inputs, address concerns, and ensure that stakeholders' interests are considered in decision making. That is key. We are actually working for the stakeholders. The product owner is representing the stakeholders. So the product owner must engage, it must build positive relationships, must gather inputs, feedbacks, must address the concerns of stakeholders, and ensure that stakeholders' interests are considered in making its decisions. Stakeholder engagement is a proactive and ongoing effort that helps create a sense of ownership, alignment, and shared commitment to the project's goal and outcome. Everything you would be doing as a product owner has to do with stakeholder engagement. Even as a Scrum Master, you'll be doing lots of stakeholder engagement, collaboration, and that's why we refer to ourselves as knowledge workers we rely on a lot of soft skills when engaging with stakeholders. And the last slide in this class, key aspects of stakeholder engagement include identification and analysis, communication. These are just English words basically, which I believe we could expand and understand on our own. Involvement, collaboration, we cannot speak enough about collaboration. Sympathy and understanding. So while engaging stakeholders, we must put on these caps as needed. Expectation management, conflict resolution, feedback collection, adaptation and transparency. Of course, we need to be transparent when we are dealing with the stakeholders. Mutual benefits and documentations. So these are key aspects of stakeholder engagement. So that will be the end of this class. If you have any question, I believe they are straightforward. You just need to take some time to understand them better so that you can internalize them further and begin to see yourself in the role engaging with stakeholders. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'll be glad to expand on them. We'll see you again in the next class. Bye for now.